And welcome back to the Luke Deckard Show. I'm your host, Luke Deckard. So tonight is a really controversial show. It's a topic I've been eager to dive into, and that is the controversial topic of the celebrity novel. Anyone who follows me on Twitter, which is I guess now called X for some stupid reason, will know that I've never been supportive of the general celebrity novel. I feel there's a lot of gimmicks surrounding this, but there are some celebrities who do genuinely write good novels. So I'm gonna pick this topic apart with my guest tonight, who is Philippa East. Philippa East is a fiction writer with HQ and HarperCollins, and she also works as a clinical psychologist. She's written a handful of books, such as I'll Never Tell, Little White Lies, Safe and Sound, and Guilty Secrets. So without further ado, let's bring Philippa on. Philippa, hello.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening. So yeah, here's my first question before we really start getting into the nitty gritty of everything. Do you remember the first time you became aware of the sort of the celebrity book, whether that's the memoir or fiction, and what kind of reaction you had to that?
Interesting. Yeah. And actually, when I think about it, probably not until fairly recently. And what I mean by that is probably I only really became aware of it or understood it or cared about it since I became an author rather than just a reader. So
Yeah.
as a reader, I definitely remember seeing books, for example, when I go to the library and get books, I remember seeing books by, say, Dawn French. And so I suppose just as a reader, I probably didn't care that much because I probably just thought, oh, this is someone who is an actress but has also written a novel. Fine. And I think it's something I've thought a lot more about since becoming a writer and had more thoughts on and reactions to.
No,
which
I
is
get
interesting,
that.
I think, because there is a whole question which we'll probably talk about is like, do readers care?
Yes.
And do readers know, and do readers care?
Yes, absolutely. We will absolutely get into that. It's funny because I mean, as a kid, I remember growing up, and I guess the memoir versus the fiction. I remember seeing like memoirs growing up. I never really thought much about it, but the time it really hit me, and this is going to be really strange, was I had moved from the States to Manchester, and I was doing my undergrad, and I was at the Arndale Center, and I was in the Waterstones, and there was a Wayne Rooney biography or autobiography, and I'm like, this dude can't string a sentence together. He didn't write any of this. And also, like, he was also quite new at that time, and I was just thinking, how does he already have an autobiography? Like, what could have happened in his life that is so interesting already that he needs to write about it? And that was the first time it sort of hit me that okay, all of these, and then it just kind of the wave of celebrity novels and books just kind of washed over me, and I was like, okay, all of this stuff is probably ghostwritten. But it was something I never really quite thought about before. But yeah, that was the first time it hit me. So I guess we're talking like 2008 or 9, somewhere in that period.
And I think it's more recent. I think the thing about celebrity novels, whether for children or adults, is much more recent. I think, I'm sure celebrities have had autobiographies ghostwritten for decades and decades.
Yes.
And I think there's kind of a sort of general understanding or acceptance about ghostwriting, and that's kind of that's kind of a way. It's kind of it's like doing a biography but selling it as if it's my own story, sort of thing, because you want to hear it from the horse's mouth. But I think the thing about novels is much more recent. I think it started with the children's books with David Walliams, etc., and then it was Richard Osman and Cozy Crime.
Yes.
And now it's just celebrities writing novels left, right, and center. But it does feel the novel thing feels fairly recent, actually. Maybe wasn't on my radar before. but it does
Yeah.
feel more recent. I don't know if you agree with that.
I agree. I agree that it feels more like children's fiction was the first genre to sort of be corrupted by it. Um,
Colonized.
and yeah,
Corrupted.
and when you look at articles and stuff like that, a lot of people are sort of frustrated with celebrities infiltrating kids fiction and screaming, I think rightfully so, about the fact that we're not getting any original voices. We're just getting these celebrities who are chefs, who are footballers, who are pop stars, thinking they can churn out a book. And it's sort of on the kids side, it really reminds me of like if you ever like meet a parent and like with a brand new kid, or the kid's like 3 or 4 or 5, and they're like, you know what, I've been reading all these kids books, I could definitely write a kids book. And you just sort of look
I
at
know
them like,
exactly what you mean.
yeah, you're like, really, could
Mm,
you could you I don't know. But on the memoir side, like, I guess on the memoir side, I never really cared about those being ghostwritten because that sort of makes sense to me.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
be because
Because it's what the product is the person's personal experience,
yeah,
and someone is just translating that into book form to
yeah,
make it accessible to
yeah,
people,
yeah,
I think.
and it's also like what also works for me is I'm sort of like, well, I can imagine that someone has an interesting life. Let's it can be anyone from someone who's worked in government, like in the CIA or
Mm.
MI6, or they've been a celebrity who was been around for decades and have seen a bunch of stuff, and maybe their skill set isn't sitting down and putting that together in a book form that they think people would be interested in. And so therefore, I totally get why a celebrity would, a publisher would say, okay, well, get this ghostwriter that you'll work with them and things like that. But the fiction boom is what's a bit crazy. And I wrote a list
Mm.
down of just a handful of celebrities, just to give people a bit of an idea of the spectrum of celebrity books at the moment. So you have people like Tom Hanks, Jamie Oliver, Millie Bobby Brown, Richard Osman, Shirley Ballas. Is it Ballas? We'll go with that.
Barris or
The
Ballast, I'm not sure. Yeah,
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 the
from
the
Strictly, yeah.
Strictly lady. Jerry Halliwell from Spice Girls, Ginger Spice, Natalie Portman, David Walliams, Ethan Hawke, Colleen Rooney, which is God, what's his name? I said
Wayne,
it. Wayne Rooney. Yeah,
Wayne.
Wayne Rooney's wife. Again, she wrote children's fiction. Madonna, Reese Witherspoon, Fern Cott, Rebel Wilson, Frank Lampard, Jimmy Eat World, the band, did a comic last year. They tried to turn like a character from one of their music videos into a character for a comic book. And I thought they actually, like, Jimmy Atkins wrote it or was involved in it, but it was just they just basically outsourced to a company that basically came out. It's almost like those like crappy books when you were a kid where someone's like, "Oh, you can be in this book," and it's just like a
Oh,
generic
right,
sort of.
yeah. Just
It was a
cut and
bit like
paste a little character.
Yeah, it was a bit like that. And then I think one that's quite funny is J.J. Abrams' son co-wrote with him this Spider-Man comic called Bloodline. So you kind of get a huge spectrum. There's filmmakers, there's actors, there's pop stars, there's anything and everything in between. But I don't know what do you think is the problem with the current boom of celebrity novels?
Yeah, well, yeah, because obviously I've been thinking about this quite a lot, and as I think
Yeah.
part of the reason we thought we would talk about it is I put a tweet up that went a bit viral about ghostwriters, and I was like, there's quite a lot of feelings here. I think there's
Yes.
two problems. One is that a celebrity, leaving aside the question about whether they've actually written it themselves or not, a celebrity is potentially getting a slot on the publishing schedule that could have otherwise gone to a just a professional author who is trying to get another contract or is trying to get their debut published. And
Mm,
a publisher generally isn't going to turn down any celebrity novel because it will
mm,
sell simply in virtue of the celebrity's name being on it, whether they have to get it
yeah.
ghostwritten or not. Whereas or an ordinary non-celebrity, their novels get turned down all the time, and so I suppose it becomes not a meritocracy in
Yeah.
the sense that the celebrity will get a pass because of their celebrity status. So I think that's one issue. And again, that's not something that affects readers, but it is something that
Mhm.
affects writers.
Yeah.
The second thing, which I don't know, like it again, someone replied to my Twitter thread basically saying, "Why do you give such a shit? Just believe in your own writing and don't worry about it. And we're never going to get round celebrities." And I was like, "Yeah, fair enough." But I think what I get cheesed off about, and it's sort of for myself, but also for fellow writers who I respect, and I
Mhm.
know how much work they're all doing and how hard this business is
Yes.
when a celebrity puts a book out or a publisher puts a book out on behalf of a celebrity that is ghostwritten and not written by the celebrity themselves, is it makes it seem like it's something that just anybody can do with no work on craft, on with
Yeah.
no time put in, with no effort. I mean, most debut authors have been writing for something like a decade on average before they first get published, and they will have worked and worked and worked to make their books as best as they can. They will have had multiple rejections,
Mhm.
and writing a book is a professional skill. And I feel like it really cheapens or really
Mm.
confuses people about what it actually takes to write a novel. If
Yeah.
yeah, if it sort of if Wayne Rooney can do it, or Colleen Rooney can do it, like
Yeah.
not to be disrespectful to them, but
True.
it's not just something that anybody can do. And the difference a lot of the time between a professional author and just your random person on the street who wants to write a book
Mhm.
is not just having an idea, but actually translating that idea into a publishable book. And for ordinary people, it's one in a million people that do that. But a
Yeah.
celebrity can just have an idea, they'll shoehorn a ghostwriter in, and there you go, as if anyone can do it. And I think
Yeah.
that's what gets to me, I think.
Definitely. James Benmore in the chat says sometimes celebrity novels can be a gateway into reading books for young readers. The first novel I ever loved was Stark by Ben Elton, which I'm mildly embarrassed about now. Um, and Nadia says, hello, hello, Nadia. Thanks for joining us. Nadia is a friend of the channel. And James also adds, it shows how risk averse the publishing industry is,
Mm,
that they'd rather bet on celebrities than unknown writers. It's true. And as I think, as you're saying, it really is. It's a boom right now. I don't remember a time in the last, I don't know, 15 years where there's been this many celebrities churning out books.
mm,
It really does seem like, there are more. It's more and more and more, and it is frustrating because, as you say, writers are putting a lot of genuine writers are putting a lot of effort into their story, into their craft, and they're getting nowhere with it. Um, and I suppose it also raises a question. What if the publishing industry is going to continue to turn towards celebrity? Where will the genuine writers go? And I'm
well,
curious,
they'll be
really curious.
ghostwriting.
Well, will they be ghostwriting, or how many of them will start turning to self-publishing?
Oh,
Because
interesting question. Yeah, yeah.
because that is becoming a much more
Mm,
lucrative, and the quality level, the quality control, you can your book can now, you can rival a published, a trade published book with the way they look,
mhm,
and
mhm.
feel, and things like that, unlike, say,
Yeah,
10 years ago, 5 years ago was still quite questionable.
yeah,
Do you think people will just be, I'm sick of this. Why would I wait around for you when I can just go and do this?
Um, yeah, I think that's a really interesting question. And actually, I think James has really put his finger on something which I
Mm,
hadn't, maybe a connection that I hadn't really made when you just talk about the publishing industry being risk averse. I think that
mm,
we see that. I think that's absolutely true right now. I mean,
yeah.
partly because of the whole economic climate in general. They are businesses, they need to have a good, you know, profit margin. And if you think about it, a celebrity novel, particularly one that is ghostwritten, is high reward, low
Mm,
risk.
Yep.
And I think, yeah, and I think publishers are the whole thing about being risk averse comes up in things like, if an author that a publishing house has taken on isn't kind of cracking the bestseller list straight away, they'll often just get dropped rather
Yeah.
than in the
Yeah.
olden days, you would stick with an author for, half a dozen books and keep working with them because you believed
Yeah.
in their writing, and you would maybe give them
Exactly.
room to do something a little bit more out there, something that isn't.
Yep.
And so I think yeah, I think that actually makes a lot of sense, James, that the publishers are going for a quick win, and they've clearly realised that a celebrity novel is a quick win. They don't have to. They don't really have to worry about marketing. They don't really need to worry about finding an audience. It's already
Mm-mm.
there. They get a ghostwriter who they know they can write a decent novel, and they package it up nicely. And
Yeah.
yeah, and then it goes back to your point, Luke, about all the voices that we're not hearing. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. Nadia mentions that, yeah, Amazon really helped with self-publishing. They have, and it's
definitely.
it's really come a long way, and I'm
Mm.
really, really quite impressed, to be honest, with some of the stuff you can do.
And sorry, just to kind of answer your question a bit more
Mm.
specifically, because I realized I
Oh,
didn't
yeah.
actually really answer it. um, will people start abandoning traditional publishing and going to, self-publishing? Yes, I
Mhm.
think quite possibly. Also, I think a trend that I'm seeing is authors maybe choosing to go to independent publishers, smaller scale independent publishers who still do have that ethos of wanting to find
Yeah.
and interesting voices and nurture writers. And I think there's people who've had
Yeah.
quite bad experiences with traditional publishing, feeling like, yeah, unless you fit this mold, unless you kind
Yeah.
of tick all the boxes,
Yeah.
you just get dropped, and they move on to the next shiny thing.
Yes. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, the traditional publishing industry could end up with nothing but a stable of celebrities writing generic celebrity books. I don't know.
Pretty
Yeah.
pretty much. Yeah, Vicky knew him in the chat. She's trade turned indie as well. James as well. He's about to release his new book, which I'm really excited about. But
Mm,
yeah, his comment here is a cozy mystery written by an already famous man is the very definition of risk
yeah.
averse. Yes, we will. I
Yeah.
will be getting into that
Yeah.
shortly. I do.
Also, I just want to pick up on
Mm,
another point from James, because you mentioned in one of your earlier comments about, and I'm not saying that Ben Elton didn't write that book, but you said it was definitely not ghostwritten because the voice is absolutely Ben Elton's. Actually, a good ghostwriter captures voice.
could do.
So I don't think it's necessarily a criterion to tell
Yeah,
whether it's ghostwritten or not. Actually, I mean, the
that's true.
ghostwriter for Harry's memoir managed to make it sound like pretty dumb. you know
That's true. That's true. It's like, okay, I gotta
I
dumb
mean,
this
Ben
down.
Ben may well have. I'm not saying that Ben didn't write it, but I'm just, yeah,
Yeah, I know what
as
you
a
mean.
point.
I do think the other problem that I think the celebrity novel brings now is it really does bring about unrealistic expectations.
Yeah. Well, that's,
Even
yeah,
for
yeah,
new and upcoming writers who are trying to get into the industry, when they get
yeah,
in and they realize that they are a small fish in a very, very large
yeah.
sea, and they are getting no attention, they are getting no marketing, they are getting no
Mm,
editorial assistance, or if they are, it's very, very, very limited. It sort of makes you, it sort of shatters. I think I did a show about this a while back, sort of about publishing writers' expectations,
mm,
and I think this kind of goes hand in hand with the celebrity stuff, because you see how they talk about, oh my god, I was working so closely with my editor and blah, 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 it was such a wonderful relationship, and then when you get in, you don't get any of that, and then your
mm.
first royalty check is 55
3p.
5 pounds or 3p. Yeah, you're kind of like, oh crap, what is this nonsense? Um,
Mm,
so because now there is a difference, I think, between the celebrity novel that's written by the celebrity and the celebrity novel that is written by a ghostwriter. And I said I think before we started, there are some celebrities who I think are genuinely good writers. I think Stephen Fry is an incredible writer. He's also a good actor. He's also a good comedian. There are some who can transcend and do multiple things and remain authentic. Hugh Laurie, I think, is another one. He wrote a book a long time ago called The Gunslinger. And what was really cool about his story is when he was trying to sell it, he wasn't telling anyone who he was. He did it under
interesting.
totally under pseudonym. And even when he got a publishing deal, he wasn't the publisher didn't even know who this person was
Interesting.
until
Yeah.
they agreed and signed the contract, and then he was like, then
Ah.
he revealed himself as that individual. And there was even a time where he was considering using the same pen name for the book, but I think he said in an interview that his agent convinced him to not, and to use his actual name.
Yeah,
But
surprise, surprise.
yeah, well, yeah, for that
But
reason,
good
he's
for
like, for that reason.
yeah, but good for him for actually basically just taking the same path that
Yes,
normal writers have to take. Yeah, and
yes,
then not only did he write the book himself, but actually he submitted it not
yes,
using his celebrity credentials, and
yeah,
actually, he got published, which means he obviously can write because yeah, actually publishers
yes,
don't just publish any old shit, even though sometimes it seems
yeah,
like it.
yeah.
Yeah. Mm,
Um, and I think what with the celebrity novel, I think some of the other problems is we've sort of kind of picked up on this, but they really kind of suck all the air out of the room. When
mm,
you look at festivals and things like that, and their top billed guests are, celebrity A, celebrity B, celebrity
mm,
C, you're just sort of like, oh, like it would have been really great if you could have maybe not and brought
mm,
other people on who actually deserve a platform. Because if you're already an established celebrity, famous and multimillionaire, what do you gain other than just maybe an ego boost from being the big
mm.
cheese at some of these events?
And again,
Um,
I don't think it's probably the celebrities necessarily pushing for that. I think it's the publishers, a bit like Hugh Laurie would have been happy to publish his further books under his
mm,
pen name, but it
yeah,
was the agent. So again, I don't think the fault necessarily lies with the celebrities. Like
mm,
I think I would imagine, and again I don't know, but I would imagine that the celebrities are told by the publishers, like, oh, don't mention that it's ghostwritten, just say something like collaborated with someone or whatever, blah, blah,
yeah,
blah. And is it the celebrities putting themselves forwards for Harrogate and festivals? I don't think so. I think it's their publishers, or the festival organizers will want these people because they draw a crowd.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
I
yeah, I
think
mean,
it
like you
was
say, like what kind of a feather in their cap is it for a celebrity to go and sit on a panel at some festival? I mean, yeah, they've done way bigger things than that. So yeah.
Yes, yes. I think I got
Mm.
into a tiff with was it Icelandic Noir? I think it was I think it was last year on Twitter where when they announced that Richard
Not a
Osman was going
Twitter
to be one
tiff,
of their
not a Twitter
yeah.
tiff.
Richard Osman was announced to be one of their celebrities, and I was like that's the very like antithesis of noir fiction. And they were like,
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
we're open to everyone, and I was like, whatever, whatever, no
Yeah.
you're not.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just thought, but okay, so do you think that there is with the celebrity books, do you feel that in terms of the effort that has to go into them, in terms of writing them, do you think it's little or more effort on the publisher side?
Well, I think that just comes down to whether the celebrity is writing their book themselves or not. So, for example, take someone like Graham Norton. I am convinced that he writes his own books because if you hear him talk in interviews, he'll describe his
Mhm.
writing process, and it's a completely
Yeah,
recognizable writing process. So, my sense with him is the amount of input from the publishers, at least talking editorially, will be
yeah,
the same as for any author. He will write his draft, he'll send it to an editor, the editor will provide editorial feedback, and it'll be the normal process. um
yeah,
I think then there's probably the ghostwriter ones where again the input from the publisher is probably not that huge because the ghostwriter is a professional author who knows what they're doing and will
yeah,
basically just write the manuscript, do some editorial work with the publishers. I wonder if there's a kind of middle one where you've got a celebrity who is trying to write it themselves and making a right old dog's dinner of it, and the editor is having to really like try and salvage something publishable out of it. I
yes,
think in terms of marketing, I think probably the publishers have to do way less than they would with an unknown writer, or a writer who's only known for
yeah.
previous fiction books.
Yeah. I
That's
would
probably
love
what
to
I would
know,
say.
like, what that marketing budget is if they, because I guess that's always the question it seems like the big wigs, uh, are the ones that they pour the marketing into to get their the books on the billboards and on the tube,
Mm,
and, on Facebook, on YouTube, everywhere. So you kind of, it's in your face. And then you also have the problem of was it W.H. Smith? There was a report that came out about a year ago or so, where it was strongly implied and suggested by people who work at W.H. Smith that their top 20 list is all just purchased by the off by
Oh
the
yeah, it is.
by the
Yeah,
publishers.
yeah, it
And
is.
it's like, well, that's, you kind of like, well, that's stacking the deck. Like, how is that even remotely fair if you can buy your way to number one? And
Mm.
of course, I can't remember who it was on Twitter recently posted. I'm pretty sure they were in WH Smith, where Richard Osman was in like 5 of the top spots within like the top 17.
How
And
does
it's
that
like,
even
how can he be like 2, 4, 7, 8, 10? Like, what is going on here? Either that's just,
Yeah.
someone's messed with the books. 'Cause I think the
Mm.
person on Twitter joked like, "What, did his mom come in here or
Yeah.
something?"
Yeah. Well, I think actually it touches on that whole issue of lack of transparency in the publishing industry, isn't it? Lack of
Yeah,
transparency about, bestseller lists, lack of transparency about ghostwriting, lack of transparency with authors about like what the
yeah,
hell is actually going on with their book.
yeah.
It's not a very, I don't know. It's got a lot of problems, hasn't it? The
It
the
does.
industry generally. Yeah.
Kind
Yeah.
of bringing back to our earlier point about festivals and stuff. I Want My TV Now. Frank in the chat says that I think that's why Millie Bobby Brown is going to Fan Expo, which is an event in the States that
Mm.
she needs to advertise her book. And yeah, I mean,
That is ghostwritten, by the way. She was someone I researched, ghostwritten.
yes, yes, yeah. It's funny. There's this picture of her. Wait, just let me find it. Let me find it. Let me find it.
She's really got under your skin, Millie Bobby Brown, hasn't she, of all
This
of
this
them?
she has got under my skin in the same way that Osman has got under my skin.
Really?
And I have no shame in admitting it. Like, I just, there's certain celebrity books that just, when they come out, they grate in a certain way that others don't. And I can't quite put my finger on. I think it's the shamelessness of it. I think there's just
Mm,
certain ones that just, it just seems so, there's certain ones that seem, it's like, okay, that's expected. Okay. I'm not bothered by it's big. But then there's others when it's this shamelessness of it. And this is what I'm gonna show. Let me pull it up. I'm not being mean. I'm just it just annoys me. Let me go to the window. This is it. So she put this up on Twitter. Let me take Frank's comment now. She put it on Instagram.
oh my
And
god, is that her own book?
her
No.
caption is "My summer read." Your summer read is your own damn book?
Well, that shows
Seriously?
she definitely didn't write it, because if she'd written it, she'd have read it bloody 50 times already.
Right? Like, she's sitting here reading like, "Oh, this is the first time I've ever read this book. This is
Yes,
fascinating."
this has come out
Like,
well. That is so funny. That is
yeah,
that is quite funny, actually. That just goes, yeah, I mean,
that's what
yeah.
annoys me. It's like, I just don't buy it. It's
But
her book.
yeah, I
Go
mean,
on.
be because Millie's book is ghostwritten, she has no clue how publishing normally works and how writing a book normally works. So it's not, she doesn't understand that that is a completely bonkers. No, I don't mean it's bonkers in
Mm,
terms of being like me on Instagram. It's
yeah.
bonkers in the sense that no author who'd written their own book would want to read it as a summer read. Like, you just wouldn't.
No.
You're absolutely sick of it. It's, you've read it a million times. You know every word of it, but she doesn't understand any of that,
No.
because she doesn't understand any of the process. And but then
Yes.
readers, of course, readers don't understand the process either.
Mm-mm.
So it doesn't make, readers who aren't writers, it doesn't make any difference to them either.
Yeah. Vicky has a question in the chat because I've heard it's said numerous times that as a justification for publishing celeb books that they subsidize other less profitable authors. Do we think that's true?
Well, I think it goes back to the point that James made
Mm,
earlier, that yes, in practice, it probably is
mm,
true. Like, you can make a lot of money for not, like, your profit margins on a celeb book are going to be potentially a lot higher than they would be on an
mm,
ordinary writer. but they they can make a bestseller out of anybody, and if they
Yep.
wanted to, they could make any writer incredibly profitable for them
Yep.
and still subsidize the other authors who aren't,
Yep.
as profitable. Of course, publishing is always going to be a subsidization model, because there's always going to
Yep.
be books that do better than the others.
Yep.
That's just how it goes. But why not invest in a normal author to make the
Yep.
profit that subsidizes somebody else? Then any author can get a chance. But I think,
Yep.
like James said earlier, I think it's just that the publishers are so risk averse at the moment. So I suppose my answer to
Mhm.
that is it's probably true, but that's not an excuse to choose celebrity novels.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I
Like,
I think I would agree with that. I agree that I believe that publishers are doing that. They're using that to but but not in a virtuous way. It's they're using the celebrities to make them a lot of money, and at the same time they're also not taking risks with new authors either.
mm, mm,
So you're not really seeing where, okay, well, this is a book that is maybe it's in the middle of like being commercial and literary, and they will absolutely turn it down because they've got something that's just so cliched commercial. They will push that out instead. And that's the kind of stuff that I think if we're watching the money trail, it's probably the big money from the celebrity books funds other safe and easy commercial fiction a lot of the time. Now, not all the time. There will be, there are exceptions. There are people who break through, and that's great. So we're not at a total loss here. It's not a total wasteland.
mm,
But it is tricky though. Um,
yeah.
Nadine Matheson, hello Nadine, says this is where I'm going wrong. I need to post photos of myself reading my own book. Exactly, exactly.
And just to pick up on Vicky's point, who says it'll subsidize the publisher, not the less
Mm,
profitable author, surely. Well, yeah, yeah, absolutely. So the money wouldn't come directly to the. It's not like if you're making a loss on your book, the publisher will be like, "Oh no, have a top up. It's fine. We'll pay you some more." But what it tends to mean is, by subsidizing the publisher, it means they can potentially continue to publish an author who's not so profitable. So in that
yes.
way, it's subsidizing the author in the sense that,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
rather than that author being dropped, they may
Yeah.
continue to publish. But I was thinking about an example, and this wasn't necessarily involving a celebrity, but I have a friend of mine, writer friend, who was in the process of negotiating a new contract with a publisher, and the publisher had offered like not a great amount of money,
Yeah.
and my friend and her agent were pushing really, really, really hard to try and get it up, because it was like, my friend was like, I can't live on this. Like, if I take this contract, like, I'm gonna have to go and get my old job back. And it was like, she was like, do you know
Yeah.
what, I just want an amount that I can actually live on a little bit. And
Yes.
they went back and forth, and the publisher was kind of like, no, 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 we can't go higher. It's just not, we've done the numbers, we just can't go higher. And
Mhm.
then the week later, she's reading how her same publisher had offered, a kind of seven-figure advance to someone. And it's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that's not necessarily about celebrities, but it's kind of the thought of like, there is the money. It's just, it doesn't seem to get, it's so disparate,
Yes.
the people at the top and the people at the bottom. And the fact that celebrities will always end up at the top without
Yes.
merit. Ugh.
I mean, I've exactly. I have always I've heard it said many times that the publishers decide who will be the next bestseller a year in advance. They
Yeah,
decide who they're going to put the
yeah,
marketing budget behind.
yeah, yeah.
Um, and a lot of times, I won't. I'm not going to name names. But there are times where I've picked up these books and I can tell there was anytime, not anytime, but a huge portion of the time when I pick up a book that has had a bunch of marketing and a bunch of advanced praise, I end up disliking it. I
Mm,
read it and I'm like, well, this is so safe. I know exactly where this is going, and I'm predicting everything that's happening in the pages
mm,
to come. And it's like, okay, yeah, you have a really cool cover and a really cool marketing design, and that's all this book has. And it's that sort of beach read stuff that is the equivalent of modern day pulp fiction that you read and you chuck to the charity shop because
mm,
it's in and out,
yeah.
um, which is quite frustrating. Um, I think there was the Guardian article that you shared along with your tweet, that does it really matter who wrote it, the rise of ghostwritten celebrity fiction. And there was a couple of lines in that article that definitely got under my skin. And one was when they were talking with Shirley Ballas from
Mm,
Strictly, um, where she's just quite blunt about it. She's like, I
mhm,
didn't write it. I just gave my ideas to Sheila, and she brings my ideas life. She's the professional, not me. And it really, it kind of stopped me. And I'm just like, then why? Why do
mm,
you get the chance, Shirley,
mm.
who is already famous, to have a book just because you have ideas? We all have ideas.
Yeah.
Why? What makes your ideas more special than the writer who is their fingers are bleeding at the keyboard, putting out, trying to put together a book that is, you know that's coming straight from them, that they're putting everything into. What was your take on her comments? Because that really just irked me, because she's
Well,
doing crime as well. She's sort of stepping into our genre, and I'm like, back off, lady.
well, again, I think actually, I think all credit to her for being so transparent and
Mm,
actually for saying it as bluntly as that. Which I wonder whether she went against again the kind of advice from her publicist with that, because I
mm,
doubt that she's encouraged to be as open about that. And she gives real
mm,
credit to the person who wrote it. And again, I would go back to the fact that um, I think it's the publishers pushing this, not the celebrities.
mm,
So, you know, it, because most of us love the if you talk to all these people, there's so many people would say I'd love to write a book one day. It's a really really common dream.
yeah,
And if you're a celebrity and someone approaches you and says would you like to write a novel, you're not going to be like oh no, I wouldn't do that, that would be treading on toes and that wouldn't be appropriate and that's taking, you're going to be like that would be great, I'd love to do that,
yes,
you know. And so I think I don't have any beef with Shirley Ballas. Actually, I think if anything, I think she's been really good at being really upfront about
mm,
this is this is her enjoying doing a project that she's always wanted to do,
yeah,
and being really upfront about how it came together and saying I'm not the professional here, it's just and I all I did was have an idea, someone else has
mm,
done all the work. But I think it's again, I would probably say it's the publishers who are pushing this. So the publisher isn't saying to the celebrity, you're going to be taking a slot away from another author, and do you realize that a lot of people
yeah,
aren't going to know. They just it's like if someone came up to me and said, "Hey, do you want to have a cameo in this film that we're filming in Lincoln? It's going to be an absolutely massive Hollywood blockbuster, and you could have a cameo part. Would you like that?" I'll be like, "I love that totally," and it wouldn't cross my mind to think there might be a jobbing actor out there who
yeah,
for whom that cameo part could
yeah,
be a really important part of their career. I'd just be like, I've
yeah,
always wanted to do something in film. I know I can't
yeah,
really act. It's only a cameo. I only have to say one line.
yeah,
But they like say I was a massive celebrity, they'd be like, "Oh, starring Philippa East." Do you know what I mean? So I don't think it's really fair on someone like her who's been really transparent. I
mm,
think I get more. Yeah, I think my beef is much more with the publishers because I think they're the
yeah,
ones who are packaging this, marketing it,
yeah.
and they wouldn't be explaining to the celebrities what this actually, the ramifications of this potentially. That's
Or
that's
or
my
are
view.
we giving the celebrities too much slack? Because do you ever listen to the podcast Script Notes by any chance?
I haven't done.
They're really cool. You should listen to them. I really like them. It's a couple of Hollywood dudes who just talk about the complications of script writing, and they do some really good critiques of people's scripts that send them in, that people send their scripts in because they want them to be critiqued. And they're really good. And I remember recently there was one of the questions that was sent in, was from a script writer who was basically trying to work out who should get credit for a project. And essentially this writer's manager sort of gave the kernel of the idea. It was like, oh,
Hmm.
write
Hmm.
write this kind of story,
Mm.
with maybe X, Y, and Z. And so this writer was asking these guys, well, then who do I need to give my manager credit or not? And they were like, absolutely not, because essentially they might have said, go write this sort of story, but they're basically the producer of this
Mm,
project. They
mm,
aren't the creative mind behind that. And I think that's what
mm,
irks me about when I see this sort of ghostwriting, where it's like, oh, I just told them my ideas. Okay, well, you're not actually the writer.
yeah.
You are a producer, and the person doing the writing is getting shortchanged in the long run, because their level of credit is so, you know,
Yeah.
stamped down,
Yeah.
because it would be like selling a movie based on like solely the producer of the movie, rather than say Steven Spielberg or Christopher Nolan, or
Yeah.
something like that. It's the person who's, that kind of bigger fish, who is develop who's, sucking in most of the money, is then also getting all the credit, when actually all they've done was give the person the money to, you know cultivate this creative idea,
Mm, mm.
and take some of their notes, um, which
But
is why I
again,
find it quite frustrating a little bit.
well, again, I think that maybe essentially, like, how hard should we be on the celebrities?
Yeah.
Again, I think that probably most celebrities, again, they wouldn't know what it takes to write a book. Why would
Mm,
they?
mm,
And I think if you said to someone on the street that doesn't really know anything about publishing,
mm,
um, is this how books get written? An author has an idea, they sketch out an outline, and then they give it to their editor, who basically writes the book. Is that how it
mm.
works? I think a lot of people will probably be like, "Oh, I don't know. Oh, maybe." Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Why would they? I just don't think that most people. So again, I think, and I go back to Richard again, talking about Richard Osman. Um, yeah. So okay, I think we agree that he does write his own books. Um, but I don't think he had any concept of how difficult it normally is to secure a literary agent and secure a publishing contract. I remember
Definitely
he was
not.
doing like a kind of giving a little speech at an award ceremony at one point, and
Yeah.
he kind of, the way he was talking about it, it just made it sound like, you write the book and then isn't it lovely when it gets published? And it was like, you have no idea
Mm,
what it
yeah.
would take, for an ordinary person. And
Yeah.
again, I just think that I don't think we can blame the celebrities for thinking potentially that this is how all books get written. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Or maybe they just had a little bit more help than most authors. But I don't think most celebrities understand that it means, spending an entire year on your own,
Mm,
grafting through draft after draft. I just don't think they have any because that's why it bugs me is even like
yeah.
friends and family don't have any idea what it takes
No.
for me to write a novel. Do you know what I mean? It's like I remember one of my cousin's husbands saying to me at one
Mm.
point, "So how long are your books really? Are they about sort of 30,000?" And I was like, try 90, love." Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean? So I think it's again, I think celebrities probably think that the way they've written their novels is similar to how any author writes a novel, or not that
Yeah.
different. And
Yeah.
so they just think, "Oh, I wrote a novel, and yeah, I sort of co-wrote it, so it's a little bit different, but it's
Yeah.
basically I wrote a novel."
Yeah. Nadine in the chat says, I 100% believe publishers anoint an author for the year, and that's the one who they'll
Yeah.
be promoting everywhere. Totally agree. Vicky Newman says, that the aspect that annoys me the most, most of the time, is the ghostwriter is barely mentioned. It's true. I think I've been saying it for a while, that I think there should be a legal requirement for publishers to have to say and credit on the front cover, who this is written by,
Mm. Or if
because
not the front
I
cover, if not the front cover, then somewhere fairly.
yeah,
Because I think
somewhere
the
very
front cover
prominent.
is like, yeah, the marketers aren't gonna go for having that on the front cover.
Well, it's interesting because, like, for example, Tom DeLonge, who is the lead singer of Blink 182 and Angels and Airwaves, he has a production company that he started ages ago called To the Stars, and it's a multimedia company. They produce films and books and comics and things like that, and in a way, it's not. it's kind of this weird ground where it's like it's sort of the celebrity endorsing the product, really,
Mm.
where his name is on the books, but the stories that they're telling are very linked to the kind of work that his organization does, but him and the main writer are both listed on the front
Mm.
cover of the book, which I think is absolutely fine. I think, for example, in the case of like the Millie Bobby Brown, it should be there is the so and so with thing,
Yeah,
and I sort of
yeah,
think that's what it should be, just so
yeah,
that people know. Just so people know, it doesn't
yeah,
necessarily need to be that so and so definitely didn't write a word of this, but it's like I think more transparency about
yeah.
Millie Bobby Brown wrote the with I can't remember the
Mm.
lady's name now. I had it written down. Kathleen McGurl
Mm.
are the two who kind of put this together, I think.
Although to play devil's advocate, doesn't that defeat the whole idea of a ghostwriter who's supposed to be invisible? And I don't really know any ghostwriters, but they might say the reason I'm a ghostwriter is I don't want my name
Mm.
on things. But I think, yeah, I
Yeah.
think because there's Peter Andre's books, and I think they're marketed on the front cover as something like as told by Peter Andre. So it's kind of like these are the stories that Peter Andre tells his kids, and we've kind of someone's written them into a book. So I think there could be a set
Yeah.
phrase. I think you're right that could
Yeah.
be, or it could be like the phrase I was thinking of is something like based on an idea by blah, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I think it goes back to that transparency thing, and like I say, I was researching. I basically my top tip for trying to figure out if they wrote it or not is you Google their name and then put writing process, right?
Right.
That's the
Right.
key phrase. And it was really interesting because even for books that are definitely ghostwritten, like Anton de Beck's book
Mm.
is definitely ghostwritten, you actually have to dig through quite a few articles to find the one
Yeah.
that makes that clear. So I think with his, I eventually found a media article that made it clear that he does not write them himself. He just
Mm.
gives some ideas to someone.
Yeah.
But there were so many other articles that just present it the same way as they would for any author. So and so's written a book. These are the ideas. They really enjoyed seeing it come to life on the page. Rah rah rah. Their background is rah rah rah. And there's nothing in the way that's presented to differentiate it from how a real writer writes. So again, I think it's you can find the information, but you'd have to really go digging for it. And most people aren't. And most people are going to read those press articles at face value and be like, right, Anton de Beck is wow, as well as being an amazing dancer and presenter, he's also an amazing writer.
Yeah.
And you're
Yeah.
like, no, he's
Why
not.
not?
Oh, no, he's not. Like, not anyone could do it.
No. Yeah, Vicky Newham also mentions in the chat, she have read that agents and managers push celebs clients into writing books to books and diversifying. Yeah, I
Yeah, I
buy
think
that.
that's. I think so.
Frank also mentions that saying quote from the studio that brought you John Wick is very real. That is true. They will use that in a trailer. But I think the point that we're making is that this isn't just about like saying from the from X publisher or whatever. That's to say from the studio that brought you X is absolutely fine. Is fine. It's by not putting by like Shirley Ballas, who's like just producing this book. She's a producer of the book, but you're not finding the other writer's name anywhere on the
Mm,
book, and
mhm,
that's the problem. It's literally like saying the writer of John Wick is the studio, and that's the problem. That's the problem that we're trying to say. James Benmore says, would either of you consider working as a ghostwriter if the money was decent? Yes.
would you? Interesting.
Maybe
Yeah.
it depends on the work. I mean, it depends. It really depends. Yeah, I said yes too quickly there. It yes with asterisks and whatnot. It would really depend on the project, but maybe. What about you?
No, never. Not because again, not because I fundamentally disagree with ghostwriting, like we've talked about. I think it definitely has its place, and I don't
Mm,
object fundamentally to certain books being ghostwritten for different reasons. I couldn't imagine putting all all the slog and effort to tell someone else's story. I've got far too many of my own stories
Yeah.
that I want to tell, and I want to tell them as my stories. So I think it would just, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I couldn't imagine, doing that personally.
Yeah.
I've got other books I want to write with my time, namely my own.
Yeah. It would,
But I
like I said, it
totally
was
get why
really,
people do it. I totally understand why people do it. Like yeah, it's a job, isn't it? It's a job like any
yeah.
other.
It would definitely really, really, really depend on the project. Um, yeah, and it would have to be a lot of money. Those are my two stipulations. But yeah, Nikki also says, not Nikki, Vicky, sorry, says how payments are split is interesting too. If the ghost gets
Mm.
a small flat fee, the celeb will make much more. That's kind of my other big problem is I'm pretty sure that's how it goes. They just get the flat fee. They
Yeah, no
probably aren't
royalties.
getting
Mm,
royalties.
mm,
Which if that is then turned into a film and all that kind of stuff, well, they've done all of the work and they're getting none of that reward.
yeah.
Um, but you were doing a bunch of research into the this earlier that you were going to go into. Do you want to dive into it? Let's do it.
Yeah, so maybe over time I'll do a massive Twitter thread with every celebrity that I can come across that's written a novel and be like, ghost written or not.
Mm,
So basically, like I say, what I did was I actually did quite a bit of googling on these celebrity authors to try and find the information to tell you whether they write it themselves or whether they did it with a ghost author. And like I say,
mm,
it's actually not that straight. I mean, it wasn't that difficult to find. It wasn't like I had to, you know, hack into the, like, pay someone on the dark web or something. But it wasn't immediately apparent,
yeah.
so I'll go through the ones that I did come up with. So Millie Bobby Brown, this was in the bookseller, the coverage of her
Yes.
deal. HQ, an imprint of HarperCollins, which is my imprint, which I feel a bit embarrassed about, so
Yeah.
it's a bit awkward.
We all make
Anyway.
mistakes.
Yeah. HQ has acquired the debut novel from Stranger Things actress Millie Bobby Brown, who has, key phrase, worked on the book with author Kathleen McGill. So I think any time another author is mentioned as a co-author,
Yeah.
that's always a thing. Then we've done the Shirley Barris one.
Yeah.
Uh, so this basically says Shirley Barris co-writing with award-winning author Sheila McCure.
Yeah.
Um, so Peter Andre, do we think he's right? I think we probably know that he's a ghost written. So the books come from Andre's ideas, but are ghost written by freelance writer and journalist Sarah Fabinet. Anton Dubek. Now, this is a quote from a Sunday
Mm.
Post article, and I really liked it because I was like, yeah, we'd all love that, Anton. Dubek readily admits his books are collaborations, with him narrating what he visualizes and somebody else taking it from there.
Oh God.
It gives him time to spend with his family, wife
Oh
Hannah, and 3-year-old twins, George and Henrietta. Well, wouldn't it be lovely if we could all write books like that, Anton? Just visualizing some ideas and someone else taking it from there while we doss
God.
about doing all the other things we like.
What?
Okay, should I continue on, or is that enough for now? Do you
Let's
want
do
to
two
hear?
more. Let's do two more.
Okay, so here's some people. Here's one that, well, I'll mention very quickly. Graham Norton, Richard Osman. I think we're pretty sure that they write their
Mhm.
own books.
Yeah.
Richard Armitage. Now, this was quite controversial because there was a lot of marketing of his book at Harrogate, and there was a bit of
Yes.
like, yeah, but has he really written it? Whatever. Okay, what do we think? Did he write it or not?
It's tricky because I'm in a writers group with a bunch of actors who are brilliant writers at the same time of while being great actors. So I'm like, he could have, but I'm gonna go with a no.
You're wrong. He did, which is
Wow.
actually quite impressive. And I think you're right about the crossover with actors. I think they do have a sort of, they've obviously experienced storytelling. So what was
Yes.
quite interesting, so Richard Armitage did a lot
Mm.
of voice narration for Audible, right? And
Mm.
Audible approached him to write a book,
Mm.
crime thriller, and they were like, "Don't worry, we'll have a ghostwriter." And then he was like, "Actually, I want to write it myself." And he, interestingly, in his interview that I listened to, he said that made it a massive, much bigger risk for the publishers because they had no idea whether I could write something decent. So he
Okay.
rejected the ghostwriter, went away and wrote, and actually he does write them himself.
Interesting.
Um, And the last one I'll mention, so Rob Rinder. Now, I don't know about Rob Rinder. There's not too much information either way. So in that Guardian article, he was sort of like, there was a sort of speculation that he maybe doesn't. And then there was a quote from his publishers saying, how very dare you, he does. And he just works with an editor in the way everybody does.
Yeah.
Couldn't really find anything sort of definitive, but evidence in his favor. He does, when he was working as a barrister, he did actually write television scripts. So he does have a background in writing. So it's not like, so it's obviously, like we were saying about, you know, developing your craft from having done some writing. So I'm not sure about Rob. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt for now.
Sure.
But it's interesting, isn't it? Yeah. And
it
also,
is.
just to say, just very quickly on that one, for the celebrities who really do write their books, they're almost in the worst position, because people are going to say, "Oh, you just didn't write that at all," and they're probably like, "I fucking did."
Yeah,
no one believes me.
Exactly. That's why I wanted to tell that Hugh Laurie story early on, because I'm very much aware that there are celebrities who can write, and it's probably just as frustrating, as you say, for them when you have, you know, 19-year-old Millie Bobby Brown producing a historical book set in World War II London, and they're just like, what the hell, you didn't write anything, you just posed in a bikini with your own book.
Some ideas. That Instagram post has cracked me up. You should retweet it saying what real authors don't do.
I should. James Benmore says, to me, writing is as much about language as it is about story and ideas. To let someone else have control of the novel's voice would not be real writing to me. I agree. And, you know, bravo to Richard Armitage. It makes me kind of want to go buy his book just to support the person who actually wrote the book and turned down the ghostwriter. But kind of piggybacking off of this list of people, it was Anton, you said, wasn't, who just throws his ideas out and lets someone else bring them to life. I was, as I was thinking about this, and I know I mentioned this to you over on Twitter, that there is this sort of comparison, I think, between this sort of celebrity writing where they just sort of throw the ideas out and let something else churn it out. It felt very similar to what's happening with AI. I mean, what's going to stop hack celebrities from plugging in their ideas into ChatGPT, producing that, then giving that to the editor of a publisher to then have that cleaned up? You've now cut out the ghostwriter who doesn't need to do anything, because you know, and it's sort of, but again, it's in that same way. I do feel like there is this you know, sort of inauthenticness to some of these ghostwritten books and ghostwritten celebrity books, where it's like you haven't put the time and attention into this. You've thrown the ideas, you've told someone some stuff, and they've done the hard work, and you have no idea what this is like. And which is why I struggle to get behind people, even if they're being honest about their role in the process. I'm just like, well, this is inauthentic to me, in the way that I wouldn't want to pick up an AI written book just because someone has the idea. It doesn't make them a writer. It doesn't make it, you know. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I wonder whether AI coming into the mix will force a whole conversation, because if you're like, okay, if you're going to read a book by a celebrity that's actually written by AI, why you feel weird about that, and not a book by a celebrity who's just written by a ghostwriter? What's the difference? You know what I mean? Because like you say, they're both inauthentic in the same way, in that the celebrity didn't write it. Now one's written by a professional human and one's written by, you know, a computer, effectively. So maybe AI could do us a favor in that way, in that if people are calling for transparency about the role of AI, which that's all the massive discussion at the minute, isn't it? What kind of laws and contracts are we going to have about whether authors and publishers need to professional human?
That used to be my Twitter handle many years ago.
I'm more of an amateur human most of the time. Professional writer, maybe human writer.
Yeah.
Um,
No, a long time ago, my Twitter handle used to be the professional human.
very
Yeah.
good. Oh, I
Well,
see. Very good.
it
Uh,
happened once when I was on a podcast with my friends, and they were like, "So what do you do?" And I was like, "I'm a." They're like, you know, you're a professional." I'm like, "I'm a professional human."
very good.
Uh,
um, yeah, so maybe, because like you say, at the minute there obviously isn't any requirement or any legal requirement to declare
yeah,
ghostwriters.
yeah,
So, but it seems like the kind of expectation is that there will be a legal requirement to declare AI input.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
would like I said, I would like, in the future, I would like books that are, celebrity, especially particularly celebrity ghostwritten. Well, that's the main one, really. Celebrity ghostwritten books. I really think it needs to be transparent, even if the ghostwriter doesn't want their name out there. It still should just blatantly say this was ghostwritten.
Yeah,
Some
or some recognizable phrase that effectively means
yeah,
that, like, inspired by, or yeah,
yeah.
like, uh written on behalf of.
Yeah, yeah. Seriously, something like that on the inside page at the very least. Because I purchased, let me see, a while back. I was in Wales, and I found some Star Trek novels, right?
Ooh.
And it's like, oh, here's a book called The Return, a novel by William Shatner, and I was like, sure. Sure it is. Um, Now William Shatner is a very creative guy, and he does write and things like that. So I didn't totally disregard it, but it does on the inside page. It says with two other writers.
Okay,
Um,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and I believe it also says it on the inside jacket as well, where they talk about it. So it's transparent. You got it. The
Yeah,
inside page is like bam right there. You can see
yeah.
he's the face. He's marketing it. He probably did the input like these people are doing, but also it's with these other people, and they aren't ghostwriters, and they're going to be getting credit, and they're going to be getting royalties from the sales
Mm,
of these
mm.
books, which I think is important. I think it's the transparency is the biggest thing. I think publishers are afraid. They don't want people to I don't know, maybe they're afraid of people not liking the celebrity, not wanting the book if they know that the celebrity didn't indeed
Well,
actually
I
write it.
I think this is the real problem that we're up against, in that you and I are both talking as authors, and my sense is readers don't give a shit,
Yeah,
and they don't really want to know. Actually, they don't
yeah,
they don't want to hear that the book by their favorite celebrity actually wasn't written by their favorite celebrity. They don't want to hear that.
yeah,
The ghostwriters presumably are happy because they are. I mean, they're not necessarily. I'm sure they could have better pay and all of that, but
yeah,
they've chosen to be ghostwriters. That's what they're doing. They understand how it
yeah,
works, and they've signed up for that.
yeah,
The publishers do not want it to change because that is their cash cow, like we've been
yeah,
talking about the whole
yeah,
way through. So, I mean, I'd love it to change, but I have to say I'm not optimistic, because I think it's authors alone who are feeling that this disadvantages them, and they feel a sense of general unfairness about it.
yeah.
But in the world of business, it's a great model business
Yeah.
wise.
I mean, just
So,
thinking about it, there's the writer's strike happening in the States and whatnot. I mean, there's
that's true.
really it would potentially be really worth discussions with organizations like the Writers Guild, who allow novelists inside
Mhm,
in their
mhm.
organization. Same with the Society of Authors, and maybe even the CWA, to start advocating for transparency. Because if you can get the big organizations involved, then you really could start, something that leads to more transparency. Us
Yeah,
rambling about it on a podcast is fun. Probably isn't going to change anything. But
yeah,
if you do seek out those options and get those bodies behind the
yeah.
idea,
I think you'd have to be clear about what the actual objective is, because transparency for the sake of transparency, okay, that
mhm,
might make us feel it's a little bit more fair and transparent. But for example, does that end up meaning that publishers become less profitable, so they're actually publishing fewer books and taking on fewer authors. So what do we actually want? Is it actually that authors who are non-celebrities are getting is the goal something about protecting the publishing opportunities for non-celebrity authors and ensuring that their advances and payments are not threatened by, because and maybe transparency is the way to achieve that, but maybe it's not actually. So
Yeah.
I think,
Yeah.
like you say, I think if you're going to, if we're, and also, is this the battle that we want to fight right now? I do think it's an interesting topic, but
Yeah.
is it, I don't know. Again, I'm playing devil's advocate a little bit, but again, I'm just
Yeah.
thinking, and I think there's a danger of us all just getting the authors who complain about it getting sort of written off as, oh, it's just sour grapes because your book didn't sell as well. It's like,
Yes.
well,
Yes.
do you know what I mean? Yeah. But so, yeah, I don't know. But that's why I think that the whole AI thing may inadvertently blow this whole thing open anyway. That's kind of what
Mhm.
I'm hoping. Maybe we can
Yeah.
ride on the back of that. We could just be
Yeah.
like, they feel like, oh, AI has to be acknowledged. We can be like, and ghostwriters?
And he goes
And
right. Yes.
ghostwriters? And just kind of
Exactly.
point out and ride the wave. Maybe that would be my
Yeah.
suggestion. That's my
Yeah. I like
strategy.
it. I like it. Right. Is it any final thoughts on all of this stuff?
um I feel better from having for having a rant about it.
Yeah.
And actually, do you know, it was really interesting because when I put that tweet out that went a little bit viral,
Mhm.
and there was a lot of people replying saying things like, yeah, grr, this is so unfair, rah 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 rah. And then, like I say, there was someone who completely laid into me and was like, why are you having a rant about this? You know, you're being absolutely ridiculous. And like, that's what Twitter can be like, right? You can
Right.
get really controversial. And actually, I, for various reasons and through various experiences, always try to, when those conversations start, I always try to bring them to a point of agreement, because I
Yes.
just think, you know, and actually it was really interesting because the fundamentally the point that this person was making to me
Mhm.
was believe in yourself and
Yeah.
don't let yourself be distracted and despondent and feel that you're not getting something just because celebrities are out there. Celebrities are out, always going to be out there, they're always going to get a slice of the pie.
Yeah.
And this person was just saying, you're a writer, go and be a writer and enjoy it and stop worrying about all of that. And
Yeah.
they came at it from like a, how dare you slam ghostwriters, rah rah rah, you know.
Yeah.
But actually I thought, I thought, you know what, I'm proud to be a writer, I'm proud of my books. And I don't know, but I do just, I'm so passionate about supporting writers to be able to write, to be able to get published, to be
Yeah.
able to have successful careers. And I suppose I'm defensive because I want to protect my
Yes.
tribe, I think,
Yes. Yeah.
because I just believe in writers.
Yeah. I think that makes sense. It's one thing to, the thing is believing isn't going to pay the bills.
True.
And I think that's where the subtle difference is here. It's like, yes, I believe in my writing. I believe that it's good. I believe that it has legs to stand on. But when you're relying on a publisher who puts no investment into the book that you believe in, well,
Mm,
that's the problem. Because
yeah.
they're putting all their money and attention into the bigger celebrities or their bigger A-list authors, which is why it's a very nuanced and not a black and white thing. I think
Yeah.
so. I totally get
Yeah.
where that person's coming from, but it's very 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 complicated.
Yeah.
Um, cool. This was a lot of fun.
It was. It was. Thank you, Luke. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, I'm glad you could make it. This was fun. We'll have you back on in the future for some other ranty topic, I'm
Sure.
sure.
I love a rant. I love a good debate.
Where can people find you on the interwebs?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, social media wise, the place I'm on most, and I am on pretty regularly, I'm pretty active on there, is Twitter. So my handle is Philippa_East. So I'm always happy to chat with people on there. Yeah, I'm always around. In terms of my books and general stuff about my writing, the best place to go is my Amazon author page. So
Yes.
if you go onto Amazon and put my name, Philippa East, into the search, you will find, yeah, all of my books and, all the jazz you want to know about me. And yeah, feel free to come and say hi.
Yes, and also the link to your Amazon page is in the description of this video
Oh,
for anyone
brilliant.
who
Thank you.
doesn't know that. So you can also use that to go check out Philippa's books.
Okay.
Cool. Well, this is the end of a great episode. I'll be back next week. Chatting with author James Swallow. He's written the book Dark Horizon. He's also written for Doctor Who and Judge Dredd and all sorts of stuff. And we're going to be chatting about that stuff. So to those who want to come back and hang out with us next week, come back. Otherwise, yeah, we'll catch you guys on social media and things like that. But yeah, we'll see you guys later.